Hey, I'm Sergio, and since I was a child, I always wanted to be a soccer player. I fell in love with the beautiful game because my dad was a local superstar. I was always at his games as a child, and I stood on more podiums on his shoulders than I could count. Everyone in my town thought that I would follow in his footsteps, but there was only one problem. I was terrible. I might as well have had two right feet the way I played. My dad should have been embarrassed, but he always supported me. My mom, well, she was a little different. Every weekend was filled with long arguments between her and my dad. She wanted to live the lavish lifestyle of a professional athlete's wife, and my dad just wanted to get better. The worst part was, I was in the middle. My mom wanted me to be a star. She made me go to every soccer camp I could, even when I pleaded with her to stay home and play with my neighborhood friends. She didn't care. I was enrolled in camp after camp and subsequently embarrassed by the best high school players in the country. I had a giant target on my back as the son of an amazing player, and the players took full advantage of my ineptitude. My face was plastered on every high school blog in the country as a joke of a player, and I soon decided to give up on soccer completely. My dad, on the other hand, was thriving, and he was offered a contract with a foreign league. He packed his bags to follow his dreams overseas. This was the final straw for my mom. She ran to the media and accused my dad of all sorts of false claims. Worst of all, lying that he was forcing me to train 24/7. My dad jumped on the plane just in time to start his new life away from my mother's craziness. The next few years were terrible as I tried to find an identity outside of soccer. I was the laughingstock of my town, and I was soon labeled the orphan with no talent. Of course, my mom blamed me for everything that went wrong in her life, and without my dad's paycheck, we soon had no money. My mom sold all my dad's memorabilia and kept all the money for herself. I was left to fend for myself. If I was going to eat, I needed to get a job. I tried job after boring job, but no matter what, I couldn't shake my love of the game. I caught any game I could. Professional, amateur, my own high school, I watched everything. All of this was in disguise, mind you. I couldn't bear to show my face around all the people who knew my dad. One day, the coach of the local team came up to me as I watched from the stands. "Hey! Who are you, some kind of spy from the other team? You're here to steal our formation, aren't you?" "No, sir. I'm just a fan of the game, and a big fan of the team. Despite the results, the team is really good, though. The tactics just need some tweaking." "What would you know about coaching a team?" For the next hour, I explained my theories on the game, and exactly how we could maximize the talent on the team. The years on the sidelines watching and learning the game under my dad had paid off. By the end of practice, Coach asked me to join the team as an assistant coach at the young age of 16. I had my dream job. And not only that, but I was getting to spend time with the coach's daughter, Sophia. She loved soccer just as much as I did, and we secretly dated for the next few months. Our results turned around instantly, and my tactics were working to a T. We couldn't stop winning, and soon our team was the best in the state. The whole team was becoming famous. Most importantly, our star player, Josh. Soon, Coach was being mentioned for a professional job. I was on the right path to move up the coaching ladder, or at least I thought that, until I was called into the coach's office. "So, as you know, my name is being mentioned for some of the top jobs. You've had a little part in that, and I'm sure you appreciate me taking you under my wing. I've got an interview coming up, and I'm going to need to see all your formations I've seen you tinkering with in that little diary of yours." I knew that he was talking about my notebook, which contained all my plays, theories, player breakdowns, and opposing team scouting reports. In short, my whole life was in that notebook. I had poured hours of film research into these notes, and Coach was asking for it outright. "Of course I can help you, Coach. I was actually hoping maybe you could bring me on to your new staff. Or maybe you could recommend me for the job here." "Always trying to snake your way ahead, huh, Sergio? Listen, you bring me that notebook, and I'll assess your position according to our needs." I mean, what other option did I have? My future was in Coach's hands. My knees were completely shot, and tactics were the only thing I knew. With no proof that any of the success we had as a team was down to my brain, I was just another guy standing on the sidelines. I handed over my notebook, not thinking it would be only 24 hours before my whole life went downhill. I woke up that morning to the news Coach had moved up his interview to that night and used my playbook to get the job at the local club. Coworker after coworker were promised to positions alongside Coach. Everyone except me. I was immediately fired. The new head coach at my current job and I were again left with nothing to do. Not only that, but Coach prevented Sophia from talking to a loser with no future prospects. His words, not mine. I soon heard through the grapevine she was dating that arrogant jerk Josh. I had lost everything. My mom was a nightmare as I struggled to find a job. I was constantly berated for being lazy. I tried to contact my dad, but my mom soon found out and made sure she cut off all communication. A restraining order was filed on my behalf against my dad, and any hope of a reunion and normal life was gone. My mom wanted to make sure I stayed with nothing. I got a job at a sports store and spent my days helping other athletes get ready to play a sport I was dying to play. One afternoon, as I was arranging a display, I heard a commotion at the front of the store. A gaggle of people were surrounding a super tall guy who was doing a poor job of blending in. He ran to the aisle I was in as the store employees kept the crowd back. I knew this guy, and it wasn't because he was famous. Tony? Is that you? You want an autograph too? No, man, it's Sergio. We used to play pee-wee soccer back in the day. I was the kid everyone said played like he had his shoes tied. Oh yeah! Hey man, good to see you! I hadn't heard anything about your family since your dad went overseas to play. How's he doing? I wish I knew. I changed the subject quickly. Clearly you're crushing it! It sure doesn't feel that way, man. Between the crowds and my snake of an agent, I'm more stressed than I've ever been. I just want to play football, bro. Me too, man. Hey, the least I could do is sneak you out the back door. Come this way. Tony was so glad to get away from his crowd of admirers that he gave me his number so we could hang out before he left town for his tryouts. A few days later, I got a phone call, and I was shocked by Tony's proposal. I found out my agent was stealing my money. I need someone I can trust around me. Someone who knows where I came from. You know soccer better than I do. What do you say? You want to be my agent? I knew nothing about being a sports agent, but anything was better than helping little brats try on shoes all day. That evening, I packed my bags as my mother screamed at me that I was going to be a failure just like my dad. I slept on Tony's couch those first few weeks as I set up tryout after tryout with different teams around the city. I was hung up on time after time as no one had ever heard of me. My only in was telling them I was the son of a semi-famous football player. When they realized I wasn't in contact with him, they swiftly ended the conversation. I knew Tony was starting to have his doubts about my ability to secure him a contract, but he stuck with me. His faith that I would get it done made me work even harder. I had an idea, but it would require me to swallow my pride completely. I called up my old coach to tell him about Tony. Wow, you've come back begging. I tell you what, I'll take a look at your little player. I had finally got my opportunity. But this time, I wouldn't be stupid enough to put it in the hands of a scumbag like my former coach. Then next week, I went from a college program to a professional team. I even hitchhiked across the border and got a few foreign coaches to secretly come to Tony's tryout. I paid a local news crew to come down and cover the session as well. When we arrived, I could tell the fix was in. Coach had his three biggest players shadow Tony around and hassle and foul him all game. I finally pulled Tony to the side and gave him my inside advice on beating Coach's team. I mean, in all reality, all his tactics were my own. The second half of the game, Tony was the star, and by the end, everyone knew he was the most talented player in the city. During his news interview, Tony had praise for one person. I have to give a shout out to my agent, who set this chance up for me. He really knows how to not put pressure on a player. My boy Sergio is a super agent. It didn't take more than 10 minutes for my phone to start blowing up. Soon I was fielding calls from every up-and-coming superstar in the country. I chose the best players I could, but my top priority was Tony. Just a week later, I couldn't believe I was on the tarmac waiting for a private jet to Europe with my new client. As I waited, I got another call I wasn't expecting. Sergio, I was finally able to get a hold of you. I heard you were going overseas. I need your help. Even though I felt like she had abandoned me all those years ago, I felt a debt to her since she was the only kind person in my life. I listened as she explained how Josh had been cut from his team, and they were soon going to be homeless without some kind of opportunity for him to make a team. What about your dad? His team could use anyone to make them better. He won't even return my calls. I don't know who else to turn to. The jet was ready to leave, and I needed to decide whether I was going to hop on and leave my life behind, or help the only person who helped me in the past. I'll call you tomorrow and set up some tryouts for Josh. Oh, thank you, Sergio. You don't know how much this means to me. I rushed on the private jet and landed in Europe. Having been around the game so long, it wasn't long before I negotiated a very lucrative contract for Tony at one of the top European clubs. Seeing so many zeros at the end of my paycheck almost made me faint. Overnight, I was a millionaire, and soon my new clients would help me bring in even more money. This was my new life now. I bought a modern 2-story apartment in the glitziest town and went shopping for custom-made suits. I needed to look the part. I went to city after city with my new players, and the dollar signs, euros, and pounds began to pile up. My business was expanding, and I was attending the hottest parties around Europe. Even the players' wives and their model friends wanted to be represented by me. Newspapers were calling me the King of Europe. A few months in, Tony had just won the championship, and I was having a big party at my house. Everyone who was anyone was there. I didn't hear the doorbell ring, but my butler came up to me. Sir, there's a gentleman named Josh at the gate. He says he needs to speak to you urgently about Sophia. I had completely forgotten about her, and Josh and I immediately felt guilty. Now, I was the one who had abandoned Sophia. I rushed outside, and an unkempt Josh was at my gate with a backpack. Hey, man. Sophia said you might be able to help me out. Is she okay? Well, not really. She's in a lot of debt, and she was too embarrassed to ask for help. I know I always treated you badly when we played together, but I'm asking for your help. At least for Sophia's sake. Against my better judgment, I let Josh in and allowed him to stay with me. I set up some tryouts for him at some of the smaller clubs, but I should have known something strange was up. When I would come back from my meetings, my papers and notes would be misplaced. Not only that, but I could hear Josh making secret late-night calls. And oddly enough, I would find papers all around the house with my poorly written signature on it. Almost as if someone was practicing writing my name. I couldn't wait to get this creep out of my house. Imagine my surprise when the police showed up at my door. Turns out I had been set up by Josh and my former coach. Josh had been placing bets against Tony's team under my name, and I looked as guilty as any inside bettor ever looked. Documents had been forged by Josh, and I immediately regretted allowing Josh into my house. My agent career was over as quickly as it started, as client after client began to leave my scandal-filled agency. As I packed my bags to head back to the States and leave my European life behind, Sophia called me. I just heard what happened. I can't believe Josh and my dad did this. You have to believe I had nothing to do with it, Sergio. Those two will do anything to get ahead. A light bulb went off in my head just then. If you really didn't have anything to do with this, do you think you could help me out? I explained the plan to Sophia, and to my surprise, she was in. That evening, I canceled my flight and called up all of my model contacts. I was going to get my revenge. I got all my model friends to hang out with Josh, and the contract he signed was soon canceled thanks to some very compromising photos. After those were plastered across the news, he wouldn't be able to get